How we doing today, Gotcha Gang? Kawaii50 here again with another War of the Visions Final Fantasy video. This video focusing on the MR rarity class of units. Now I know it's super tempting, especially if you're a Gotcha game veteran, to try and go in all on UR characters and try to just completely max them out, make them super strong. That is fine, but War of the Visions is a little different than your typical Gotcha game. There are MR characters that are actually really strong additions to your team, and MR characters in general, you have a lot easier time leveling them up than the UR characters. They take significantly less materials to level, and it's a lot easier to get them to level 99 than your typical UR, especially Gilgamesh, who takes twice as many materials as your average UR. So today we're going to go over some of the best MR level characters you can sort of pick and build your team around in War of the Visions. Now, there's only two I won't be talking about just because I mentioned them in my last video. Mont, story character, you definitely want to go ahead and level Mont just because he's the absolute easiest character to level in the entire game. I'm not going to go in depth on Mont. Same goes for Y'shtola right now. If you're starting around launch, Y'shtola, while her stats may not be the greatest compared to some other MR casters, she still is super easy to level and is still going to be a great addition to your team, especially when you get the magical ability Foul. So definitely level Mont and Y'shtola. Now, going on from that, let's talk about the other MRs currently in the game that are absolutely worth your time to level. And we're going to kick off today's video with the absolute king of the MR rarity, and that is Ryu. Ryu is a gunner and a thief and a red mage. Those are the three classes that are available to him. In the story, he's presented as a shinobi. I don't know why he doesn't have the ninja class. I don't know why a ninja would use a gun, but we're just going to ignore that for the sake of the rule of cool. Now, there are two very strong UR rarity dark type characters in the form of Ziza and Stern. Ziza herself getting the thief class, but if you don't have either of them, or if you're looking for someone that's kind of an easier investment or a ranged attacker, Ryu is absolutely worth your time for a couple of reasons. Let's start, of course, with the abilities. Ryu does get access to the very powerful thief ability, Steal Time, which halves the target CT and raises his own agility for 3 turns. Now, this ability is going to be really useful in a lot of stronger content coming out down the line, content where we actually have to beat the enemy before a certain number of turns have passed. So you'll be needing to use Steal Time in order to beat that in, excuse the pun, a timely fashion. On top of that, Ryu in general is just a very strong single target attacker. Guns might take a little bit of getting used to, but if you can master their use, guns are actually a really powerful way to fight your enemies. He gets Blackout, which has a chance to blind your enemies for 3 turns. Aimed Fire raises his own range and grants an extra bit of damage to all allies for 3 turns. Now, this is just for other people around him, so he won't grant the range to himself. But this is okay because you're able to give him abilities like Missile Mastery, which raises his overall missile attack. He also has access to Thief Lore, which raises his move by 1 and increases his overall agility. A very important stat for him. And he also gets abilities like Arm Shot, which has a chance to disable your opponent. Now, his Trustmaster on top of that is very good. His Trustmaster is the Moonless Gun, and it has a chance to blind on every single attack. So Ryu not only has an access to a very strong weapon for himself, but has access to a ton of utility abilities that make him a very mobile and very strong attacker. He might be a little weak to start off with. You're gonna have to craft him at the very minimum Capella and give that to him in order for him to deal any sort of damage, but Ryu is highly worth the investment. Now, moving on, I've got a couple of healers that I want to talk about, and we are going to, of course, start this off with the darling of Final Fantasy, Brave Exvius, Fina. Fina is really good, even though Let's get the disclaimer out of the way first. Both the healers I'm going to talk about are light type. And yes, I know there are a lot of very strong light type URs out there. Engelbert, Rob, Thancred, Marguerite. But if you need a healer, which you're going to need a healer in later content. As I said in my previous video, healers aren't a big deal in early game content, but in late game content, you're going to need one. I would probably recommend focusing on one of these really strong healers. Let's take a look, starting with Fina's Trustmaster. Reincarnation as a chance to charm, and it's got some really good stats. A nice boost to magic, a nice boost to attack, decent boost to crit, and a solid boost to HP as well. Fina does get the White Mage of Lapis class, which is only available to her, and she also has access to Gunner for more damage, and more importantly, Cleric for that little bit of extra healing. And Fina's healing abilities are no joke. She gets Cheer, which it in and of itself is really worth using for Fina. It raises your allies' faith and raises attack and magic for 3 turns while bestowing Protect on them. So if you're pairing Fina with, say, a Mediana or a Y'shtola, any of your caster damage dealers, Fina is going to be able to buff them up, make them less squishy, while also raising their damage on top of that, and their faith, which is related to their damage as well, all in a single attack. So that, in general, very strong. She also gets access to some super powerful healing abilities, like Full Life, you can see here from a White Mage of Lapis class. Completely heals your target, recovers their HP to full. She does get access to Counsel from the Gunner tree, which raises the critical hit rate area of allies around you for 3 turns. So if you're looking to make a more offensively supportive Fina, you'd select Gunner as her subclass, but you're probably going to pick Cleric for a couple of other abilities, like Erase, which we just clicked on, which removes all debuffs from target within range. She also gets access to Regen from her White Mage of Lapis class, which bestows Regen on all allies within the area for 3 turns, healing their HP every single turn. And with that being an area ability, it's pretty good. She also, of course, gets access to Curaga, which is one of the strongest healing spells in the entire game. And her Honest Wish ability, pretty good defensive ability, chance to still regen on herself after taking damage. So Fina, not only does she have the ability to buff up your allies, but she also has a decent bit of survivability as well to keep her alive so she can continue to heal your allies. So Fina, very much worth it. And let me add just one final note on here for Fina. Her Master ability, which is unlocked at rank 40, grants her an extra 15% dexterity and gives her a plus 25 resistance to all magical attacks. So magic will not take her down. She can also grant herself Protect. Fina's no joke. But pretty much as impressive as Fina is Grace right here. We definitely gotta talk about Grace, because she's got a lot going for her. I might even consider her better than Fina, though it's definitely a toss-up. Grace gets access to the White Mage, Green Mage, and Lancer classes, and her level 40 Master ability grants her magic plus 20%, as well as plus 10 resistance to all attack types. You want your healers to stay alive, so having a tanky healer is pretty good, I would say. Her Trustmaster reward is her Magicite Staff, which grants her the ability to disable the opponent. That makes them unable to take actions, though they can still move. Really good ability there. It's also got a crazy magic boost on it, plus 106 magic. That is phenomenal. Let's go ahead and take a look at Grace's abilities, because Grace has some very good abilities as well. She has, of course, Regenerator, sort of like what Fina had, where you can get Regen on her for 3 turns after taking damage. And let's go ahead and look at some of her stronger abilities. She, of course, gets Regen. She gets Curaga, so White Mage, pretty much the same as White Mage of Lapis. She does not get access to Cheer, though, which is the big differentiator between White Mage and White Mage of Lapis classes. But that does not mean she doesn't get access to a couple of other really good abilities. She gets access to Holy, so that bonus magic damage is not lost on her at all. On top of that, she gets a couple of damaging abilities from Lancer, but we're going to completely ignore those because she also has access to Green Mage, gang. Green Mage is where the buffs are at. Barlight raises light res of all allies within range for 3 turns, gonna make your farming easier. Vitalize raises a target's agility for 3 turns. Maybe you want to throw that on Ryryu, I don't know, sounds like a match made in heaven to me. Emerald Echo, of course, increasing the duration of buffs and debuffs cast by her for 1 turn. She also gets, boom, all elemental attack res plus 10 from the Lancer tree. So even more tankiness thrown on top of her. Savior's Protection raises her debuff res, her magic attack res, just res on res boost for Grace. It's going to be very hard for your opponents to take down a level 99 Grace. She's going to be able to stick around and heal up your entire team. Is Grace worth it? I'll let you make that judgment for yourself, but I kind of feel like it's a yes. Now, continuing our trend of talking about casters, I want to go over and talk about Marguerite. And Marguerite, I mainly want to talk about because she is a fire element character. There's only one fire element you are in the game right now, and that is, of course, King Elda. So if you did not pull King Elda, Marguerite is where I would recommend your fire element materials go. To start with, Marguerite's master ability that she gets a level 40 raises her max TP by 15% and also raises her magic attack by 30. And she's going to make good use of that magic attack considering she has access to the Black Mage and Red Mage classes on top of her standard Time Mage class. And Time Mage, even by itself, is a really, really good class, which we'll of course get into in a second. Let's talk about her Trustmaster reward, the Magic Baton. You can see it reduces casting time by 50, which is absurd. I'm sure you've all had a couple of maps where your casting time has kind of screwed you over, especially if you're targeting a specific area, so any reduction to casting time you can take is going to be a magnificent boon for your entire team. Let's go ahead and take a peek at Marguerite's abilities. Now, Marguerite has a bunch of really, really strong abilities to help her deal even more damage. Magic Up, of course, at the end of her Black Mage tree is going to raise her magic for every little bit you put into it. She also has access to Speed Cast, which significantly reduces the activation time of her magical casts. Now, she does have an ability called Null CT Changes, which does nullify slow and stop, but also nullifies haste and quicken. So I would actually not recommend putting that on her if you want her to get the benefit of her time magic spells, because that's very, very important. Now, Marguerite does have the ability to counter with slow whenever she takes damage. That is a pretty nice basic starter, but I would wholeheartedly recommend giving her Magic Reflex instead, giving her a chance to completely and utterly evade magical attacks. Again, these mages just showing us that they don't mess with magic. They ain't gonna get affected by magic. She also gets access to Fast Cast, which reduces an ally's activation time for 3 turns. So not only is she gonna be super fast at casting abilities, but she's gonna make all of your other allies super fast at casting abilities. But that's, of course, if you plant her in the Red Mage tree. Now, she has a couple of different ways you can go. You can either plant her in the Red Mage tree as her secondary tree, give her a little more access to some buffing abilities, or you can plant her in the Black Mage subclass to have her deal more damage. Now, with all the magical boosts she gets, I would definitely recommend making her subclass Black Mage, especially because she gets Meteor from Time Mage. So getting Meteor from Time Mage, getting all of those magic boosts. She also gets access to Firaga, so she has a chance to deal a ton of fire damage. Seriously, gang, if you're not feeling leveling Y'shtola, if you want to level a different fire mage instead, Marguerite's the way to go. Marguerite is easily the way to go. Now, I'm sure a lot of you playing the game have noticed this, but there are no water element URs in the game right now. So where are all of our water awakening materials supposed to go? We're actually going to slot them right into Ramada, because there are not going to be any water element URs until Miranda drops, as well as Christmas Ramada this Christmas. So we might as well just slot those abilities into regular Ramada instead. But regular Ramada is actually pretty good. Her level 40 master ability grants her plus 30% max TP and a plus 20 to her piercing attack. Her Trustmaster reward, the Astrologer's Lance, has a chance to sleep your opponent, and it grants her 99 attack, 9 crit evade, and 68 HP. Not bad boosts for her Lancer class. Speaking of classes, she gets access to Lancer, Spellblade, and Thief. So if you don't have a Steel Time user, you can go ahead and focus on that, because Ramada does get access to that Steel Time ability we mentioned previously. But I would actually recommend putting her in Spellblade instead, and we're going to take a look at some of these abilities to go over why. Now, we'll start with her Lancer abilities first, since that's her primary class. She does get access to Deadly Mastery, raising her critical hit rate, and Pierce Mastery, which raises her pierce attack. You can actually build Ramada a little tankier with abilities like Providence of Fire right here, raising her magic attack res as well as her fire res. Now, if you're looking for Ramada to continue raising your magical defense, she does get access to Resist Magic, which raises all of your allies' magic res, as well as Taunting Spell, which forces your opponent to attack Ramada for 3 turns. However, that damage is dealt based on the caster's magic stat, so probably not a super good ability for you to focus on with her. You mainly want to take Spellblade for these extra little defensive abilities, these magical barriers that Ramada can apply to both herself and her party to sort of make her sneak into the middle of the enemy's caster lines and deal a bunch of damage. She does get access to some cool things from the Thief tree though, like Quick Action, which has a chance to significantly raise her own agility upon taking damage, but a lot of stuff from Thief you're mainly not going to focus on unless you need someone on your team to steal time. Otherwise, you can slot Ramada's secondary class into Spellblade, have her raise her and all of your allies' magic resist, throw her into the back lines of your enemy, and completely decimate their mages. And gotcha gang, that's going to wrap it up for the best MRs to level up in War of the Visions Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. I hope this little video was able to help you sort of plan around some of your builds. Maybe you have some materials you don't quite know how to use yet. Maybe you're afraid to level some characters because you've heard of how scarce materials are in this game. So hopefully going over each of those individual characters was able to help you make an informed decision and overall make your time with this fairly complex game a little more enjoyable. I'm of course still trying to figure out things myself, and I'll be putting out more War of the Visions videos as I sort of gain more of an understanding on this game, read up more on this game, play more of this game. Because I really enjoy it. I really like that we've got another Final Fantasy Tactics on our hands. Now, if there's a unit you think I missed, or if you really think one of the units I did pick is solid and you want to reiterate that to the rest of the people watching the video, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. I do want to hear from everyone that is giving this game the time of day, because I really think it has a chance to take off into something incredibly special. This is Kawaii50 again, hoping you have a phenomenal day. I will see you all in our next video.